installing the ESX server. Just power on the VM. Let that power on, let it install, and then you eject the ISO, you reboot it. Also set your root password and remember it. So this shows that the disk itself will be partitioned for the ESXi server, so we're probably going to see that in the GUI. Press enter. To access the management console with a GUI, notice 192.168, so the DHCP assigned address. Use that to log in into Firefox. Same credentials, using root. Sure. Just take a minute to look at the management console itself. You can see the host pertains to the ESXi server itself. You can see the CPU capacity, what's being used, the memory. I allocated 5 gigabytes. And the storage, you can see it was originally 500. It's been partitioned. So right now you can see, yeah, it's not quite 500, obviously, because it's been partitioned. There are no virtual machines, nothing, no networking that's been customized. Data store 1 is created by default. So this refers to the hard drive of the VM, the ESXi VM, essentially, the bare metal hypervisor. Let's create a virtual machine. So go in virtual machines, create. Say brand new one. Let's call it test machine. Windows. Right, so it takes all the information, or it allocates, its information is allocated to the data store. Let's say all of it. And then what you would do is do thin provisioning to make sure it doesn't allocate all the space. Or you can add, say, 100 gigabytes for a hard drive. So all of this is taken from the layer, the virtualization layer of the server. And 4 gigs out of 5, I could put less, I could put more, it doesn't matter. Enable thin provisioning so that not all the 100 gigabytes are allocated right off the bat. You would go to thin right here and click finish. You can see that the VM has been created successfully. If you look at the bottom task here, recent tasks, everything's completed successfully. Notice if you browse in your data store, so you in storage, you have your data store here. When you browse, you can see the test VM is in it right there. Okay, this was just a demonstration. I'm actually going to delete this VM, so I go virtual machine. If you wanted to, you could create a virtual machine into that server from the workstation itself. You'd have to go File, connect to a server, then you enter the IP address of the ESXi rather, username and password, so root in your password, and then you would get this. You can see the tasks are the same as what they were in the GUI, and then you could also say if you wanted to create a virtual machine, you could do it. So that's interesting. Now we're going to deploy Nostalgia VM, so which is an OVF file essentially. Virtual machines, register, deploy this. Of course. So we're going to select the OVF. Okay, so when you select, you're going to need these three files, MF, OVF. So this constitutes OVA, essentially. You add that. Then, say, you can verify everything's been completed successfully right here. If you wanted to access the CLI on the server, you could do it this way. You go host, manage, services. The SSH service by default is not running. If it is, then you turn it on. Then you can use PuTTY to connect to the CLI. That's good to know. Now we're going to deal with the server and storage. So virtual switches. Virtual switches, it functions the exact same way as VMnets in the VMware Workstation. So it's used to provide network connectivity between for VMs and consoles within the server itself. So when we look at port groups, all these groups here are simply logical associations between a logical interface and a physical interface. So when you look at, say, the VM network, this came by default when we set that up. No, actually, the management one did. Management network. So we have three NIC cards possible on the VM itself in Workstation. It uses one of them, and then we have the management network using an adapter for the management console. And if we look at the VM network, this is Nostalgia Virtual Machine connected to the physical, the adapter and workstation essentially. To move a virtual machine to a switch, select Virtual Machines. Select Edit, Port Group. Network adapter settings. This is your port group.